Thank you, Fred. Now, it's easy to forget that the entire history of electronic computing only dates back 40 years or so. The changes in that time have been astonishing, as Freff found out when he took a trip to Museum Wharf in downtown Boston.
Boston has long been a center for research and development in computing, and is the East Coast's answer to California's Silicon Valley. But it's also a city with a sense of history, so it's perhaps appropriate to find, next to the famous Boston Tea Party Harbor, in a converted warehouse, the world's first computer museum. The museum opened here in November 1984. Its collection features such highlights as the first object ever designed on a computer, this rather dull ashtray, a somewhat premature tombstone for the computer language COBOL, and even a display of animals built from leftover components and used in America in an advertising campaign. The oldest computer on display in the museum is Whirlwind, developed in 1945 at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It cost $5 million to build and filled 2 very large rooms. This is one of the original modules. The U.S. Navy used it as a primitive flight simulator, and later it served as a prototype for the next computer on display, the Q7. The Q7 was the largest computer ever built, weighing nearly 175 tons. It used over 55,000 vacuum tubes ranged in 7-foot-high racks. Each of these tiny cores stored a single bit of data, giving the Q7 a total working memory of just 64K, the same as a small home micro today. There was also backup storage on huge magnetic drums that rotated at over 90 miles per hour and had to be constantly monitored against overheating. Each held about the same amount of data as a modern floppy disk. The Q7 was all a real computer should be, lots of switches and flashing lights. And it can also claim to be the longest-lived computer ever. It was built in 1958 as part of the American Air Defense System and, amazingly, was still in operational use in 1983, 25 years later. The control room, where the technicians tracked aircraft and missiles on bulky cathode ray tubes, was bathed in a vivid blue light. And there was even an early attempt at user-friendliness. Each console had its own light pen.
The fighters lock on target, and rockets are fired.
This was a breakthrough. Not this, this. It's Digital's PDP-8. The first ever computer you could plug directly into the mains, it ushered in a whole new era of powerful mini-computers. Much more powerful and much larger was ILIAC-4, an early supercomputer. Its 64 processing elements, this is one, were the first to use solid-state memory chips. It cost over $100 million and consumed a greedy 500 kilowatts of power. The museum has devoted one of its galleries to computer graphics. This is perhaps the earliest example. It's a cloth portrait woven on a jacquard loom, a device that was programmed with punched cards. The first visual display units, huge cathode ray tubes, nestle up to the very latest plasma screen technology. Plasma screens work by using a grid of wires to energize tiny pockets of fluorescent gas. Ever wonder why so many computer graphic images have teapots in them? In 1974, a computer scientist named Martin Newell needed a simple curved shape for some imaging tests. and he happened to have this teapot on his desk. So he laboriously photographed and measured it, then entered all the coordinates into his computer. Other researchers, rather than repeat that effort, simply borrowed Newell's data, and a flood of simulated teapots was unleashed upon the world. Behind this glass is Martin Newell's original teapot. And in the computer alongside, Newell's data is processed to produce a matching picture. This section of the museum is dedicated to the evolution of the personal computer. Set your time machines for a long while ago, 1975. That's when this came out, the Altair 8800 microcomputer kit with a mind-boggling quarter K of memory. 2 years later, you could buy this Commodore PET 2001. Although a look at its keyboard shows it's still more for techies than typists, it did have an onboard cassette recorder. Here we have the Radio Shack TRS-80. We call them trash 80s here. The Honeywell kitchen computer, a failed consumer product. Very few housewives wanted to spend $10,000 to catalog their menus, but here was a winner. This board had two major innovations. First, its processor and its memory were together on the same board. That had never been done before. And secondly, it had BASIC built-in on a ROM chip. It's the Apple I. And when hobbyist Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built this, they had no idea they were about to spawn a multinational corporation. Over here, we've got the Osborne I, first portable microcomputer, and two British machines, the Sinclair ZX80 and ZX81, which broke price barriers and introduced thousands to computing who would never have otherwise discovered it.
Yes, including me. Freff reporting there on the short history of computing. And it's interesting to think that if the ZX80 had been launched just 30 years earlier, they'd have had to find room inside for this. It's 1 kilobyte and several kilograms of memory, circa about 1950. More about the history and development of computer memory next week. I, for one, am glad they didn't have those inside. Well, last night saw the Second Annual Interactive Videodisc Awards. One of the winners was Jim Braithwaite. Jim, we're familiar with interactive computer games, but how is this different?
Well, the main difference between the games that we've been talking about earlier in the program is that we now have access to video data, which is held on the video disc.
And we've got a video disc here, yes?
Yes.
What is actually stored on there?
Well, we can store anything from 55,000 still frames, video pictures, films, computer information and soundtracks.
The whole lot.
Yeah.
It's a vast storage medium then.
A vast storage medium.
Where does the computer come into all this?
Well, as you can see here, if we look at the game, we can move from the first floor to the second floor. The computer is now controlling the video disc. It's going to find the appropriate frame and start us off on the game.
Now this is the, that's a more computer animation here. Now this doesn't look like BBC computer animation.
No, it's not. It's produced by another micro and then laid off onto videotape and put onto the video disc.
So what are we required to do? We press the space bar to get into the room.
We press the space bar and we're into the game.
Right, ladies and gentlemen.
What's happening is the doctors who play this game, it's a game for doctors, are trying to find objects which are hidden behind the various rooms. And they're given some light-hearted entertainment as they're going through. But there are some serious questions also on the disc.
So this is a question coming here, is it?
Yes.
The humble zen. The second item, a bowl.
The idea is it's a race against time, or you're supposed to collect things or score points? What?
It's both. It's a race against time, and you can score points by answering the questions correctly. At the end of this sequence, the question will come up. The computer will put the question over the top of the video, and we'll be able to make a choice.
Now this is a very long-winded one. I noticed we've had some much shorter ones today.
Yes.
We haven't been able to control what's come up. This is totally random, I take it.
Well, it's based on the program. The program is a very simple one as far as the computer is concerned. It's a basic program, but what it's able to do is to access the video pictures, and then when it runs up to the particular frame that it's looking for, it will switch back to the as it's done now.
Right, so we've got a question
that
here.
one.
All these, or extracts from them, have been used for contraception to promote wound healing in cancer therapy, or repeat the question. Oh, I don't know, number 2.
Okay, there we go.
wrong, I'm afraid.
What's the purpose of it?
Well, the purpose of it is to, it's a promotional item which the drug company who commissioned it, they use it for entertaining their doctors and to helping with the education.
Now, so far, most of the images we've seen have come off the video disc. What does the computer do apart from take the input?
Well, it controls the program, it randomizes, because we didn't know what particular pictures were going to come up behind each of the doors. It takes care of that, and it also keeps our score.
Thank you. Well, I do know that video, interactive video, isn't just games like this, and all kinds of other things, but where can we see it in action?
Well, the best place to see it is, and the other prize winners from the game, is at the National Interactive Video Centre in Marylebone Road, London.
Right, thanks, Jim, and congratulations on winning.
Thank you very much.
Leslie?
I don't know, doctors are supposed to be a sales-resistant group. They'll never be able to resist that. We'll be back at the usual time next Friday with, among other things, a good look at the machine everybody's talking about. Here it is, Commodore's new micro, the Amiga. But that's enough for now. Until then, bye-bye.